The mission is to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together.
And welcome, everyone. Welcome to Slater Pod. Today, we fully focus on our guest conversation. So we're really happy to have Iris Orris join us today. So Iris is the VP of Internationalization, Product Quality, Product Experience at Meta. Yes, the Meta. So Iris, where does this podcast find you today?
I am in Napa, California today at my home. And I'm very excited to be here with you, Florian, and Esther.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. It's great to have you with us.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Iris, for joining us today. So first, tell us a bit more about your professional background. A lot of people in the language industry know you, but tell us more. What drew you to the industry, and how did you come to work at, Meta/Facebook? I'm not sure it's Meta, right?
It is Meta, but when I talk about my history at the company, I talk about Facebook when it was Facebook, and I refer to that time, and I talk about Meta when I refer to the current time. That's how I kind of hold it. I think everybody maybe has their own way of doing it, but that's how I do it. So yeah, I have kind of an unusual story, I think, but maybe then it's a little bit more, normal for my generation in localization, because localization as an industry didn't really, evolve until somewhat recently, especially with degree programs in localization and all of those types of things. So by training, I'm a geologist. And I've always loved languages. I've just loved them. I've worked and lived in 4 different countries on 2 different continents. And I came to the US because my husband is American. And I came to the US in the late 90s. And I thought, I don't want to work as a geologist. I loved studying it, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. And I thought, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area. Let me see what I can get. So I typed German, French, Spanish into the San Francisco Chronicle classifieds online kind of job site search. And this localization testing job came up, and they were looking for somebody who could test software in German and French, maybe Spanish. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to apply. So I applied at this technology company. It was a little startup called ABT. And half the interview was, but you don't know anything about computer science. You don't know anything about programming. And I said, look, I have a STEM degree. This must be doable. But did you know how many years it took me to really learn these languages and be fluent in all these languages? This is hard work. And so they just kind of liked me, and they basically hired me at a low level, and they said, okay, we're going to take a chance on her. And then I ended up taking some programming classes at the local college, and to just get some, more formal training while I was working there as a tester. Eventually, after about a year, when I had more programming under my belt, I switched into localization engineering, and I was a localization engineer, basically working on tooling, on builds in all the other languages for many years. Then at Autodesk, at Microsoft, I was Microsoft for 10 years, where I kind of moved more into people management as well. And and I found this passion, right? I really found this passion that combines my passion for languages and cultures and also technology. And then in 2012, I was approached by then Facebook, because the director of localization was exiting at the time, and he knew me. He approached me and he said, hey, maybe you want to think about this. And I started researching Facebook, and I started realizing that, even their mission at the time was to give people the power to share and make the world more open and connected. And I thought, oh my gosh, with a passion for internationalization, with a passion for languages, this is the biggest playground in tech, right? This is where you get up out of bed, go to work inspired and motivated, because you want to solve these problems, these challenges, and really figure out how to make the world more open and connected. Because you can't do that without removing the language barrier. And that's kind of how I ended up at Facebook. And it's been a great kind of run since 2013. I joined in early 2013. We, of course, have scaled tremendously. We have gone beyond, the Facebook product. There's Instagram. There is Reality Labs. There are many other products that we support today. And it's really an incredible place to be, because the momentum in this company around anything international, around languages, is very strong, because it's center stage to its mission, right? And the updated mission that we have now is very close to the original one, which is give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together. And you can't do that without bridging the language barrier and bridging the cultural barrier.
I mean, I think I've probably already got a sense of this from some of what you've talked about already, but what would you say kind of motivates you to keep working in the field of internationalization? I suppose, whether that's at Facebook and Meta specifically or more generally.
Yeah, absolutely. I really have developed this framework for myself, and this is something that I developed really by myself. I call it the 3 Ps: purpose, passion, and people, right? I really try to pivot myself along those 3 Ps. And when I think about purpose, the first P, I think about the company that I'm working for. Where do I put my time? Where do I go every day, or 5-6 days a week, depending on how busy we are, usually 5 days a week, and really right now to my office at home, of course. But where do I spend my time? What do I want to work on, right? And when I was at Microsoft, the mission or the vision was a PC on every desktop. And, that really inspired me, because I felt that really everybody in the world should be included in joining the knowledge economy, in joining the kind of, digital age. And that's kind of how I ended up there. And it's very similar with Facebook and now Meta. I'm very inspired by its mission, right? I feel like it has purpose. The give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together really has purpose and resonates personally with me. Then the second piece is passion. I kind of told you a little bit about my passion for languages. And, I think this came from me being an only child and being the kid of crazy German parents who traveled the world everywhere. And, I don't know whether you've noticed, but if you go to the end of the world, you'll meet somebody German. And this is usually true. At least this is what happens to me.
Happens to every Swiss as well, all the time, trust me.
Yes. And so, but as an only child, right, I was very dependent on being able to find other children to play with and to interact with and communicate with. And so very early on, I wanted to learn as many languages as possible. I wanted to learn all the languages so I could communicate to all the people. And of course, it's not possible to learn all the languages, but that really instilled my passion in languages. And it instilled my passion in trying to remove the language barrier, cross this gap, and remove the cultural barrier, right? I spent time in 3 countries outside of Germany, working and living there, because this really drives me. This really gets me out of bed in the morning. And so this is the passion element of my role, where I get to work on the language barrier, I get to work on global enablement, I get to work on the cultural barrier as part of my job to serve this mission. And that's kind of the second piece that's really, really important to me. And the third P, people. How can you do good work without having a great team, right? And by team, I mean upwards, sideways, downwards, everywhere, right? The people you work with are critical to how much you can get done. They're critical to your mental well-being in a way, right? You need to have fun at work. You need to have great people that support each other. You need to have a great culture. You need to be able to do your best work. You need to have diversity. You need to have inclusion to really accomplish those things that we set out to do. And for me, At Meta, I find that the people I work with every day are really inspiring me and are amazing. And so those are the three P's that I always look for when I look for, where do I want to spend my time? Purpose, passion, people.
Now, you did mention a little bit about the mission before, right? But like, how important of a piece is language in kind of Meta's broader mission? There was recently we came across, some announcements around MT, and just generally it feels like it's being taken very seriously. Just kind of elaborate a little bit on that and how it fits into kind of the broader purpose there.
Yes. I kind of, went over this a little bit before. Again, the current mission is to give people the power to build community and bring the world closer together, right? And there is no way to bring the world closer together. The world that speaks 7,000 different languages, with about half of them have writing systems. There's no way to bring this world closer together unless we really bridge the language gap and also the cultural gap, right? And I talk about this in three silos when I talk internally about how internationalization is structured at Meta. The first piece really is the technology side, which is, I call it global enablement. So this is, can you process different currencies? Do you have the right time formats? Do you have the right date formats, right? And do you have the right number formats? I mean, imagine somebody is buying something, right, or paying for something on Facebook today, and the number formats aren't lining up, right? That would be very bad. And so this is the basics of kind of global enablements. It's also, for us, includes something like finding friends. So if you're in Japan, there are different ways to write your name. They have, different writing systems, sometimes alphabetic even, and then they have hiragana, katakana, and kanji. And depending on how you write your name, we've got to be able to kind of convert these things in the background and make sure you actually find your friend. And so those are all global enablement type of things. That's more the tech side of internationalization. Then there is the removing the language barrier side, which is actual localization. That is making our product accessible in languages other than English. And then there is the what I call removing the cultural barrier, which means making our products aligned with your cultural context, right? This sometimes gets really confusing for people. So I want to give a quick example of what I mean when I mean removing the cultural barrier, because nobody wants to change the product Facebook. Facebook is there for you to connect with friends and connect with family. And so everybody in the world, every human has this kind of, desire to connect with friends and family. It's inherent to us as humans, and we're not changing that. But if you, for example, live in Indonesia, 1/3 of the population there only has one name. There's no first name, last name, there's just one name. So in our original registration process, we ask for first name, last name, because we're a real name platform. So somebody from Indonesia with one name comes in and says, how do I fill this out? They fill their name into first name, and we say, hey, we also need your last name right now. And they are very confused, right? And so either they, work around it by putting their name in twice. And, imagine you show up on Facebook as Florian. That wouldn't feel too good.
Yeah.
Or, they just drop out of the process. So this is really the bridging the, cultural barrier of enabling it. When you sign up in Indonesia, you only get one name bar to fill out at the registration time, and that's it, right? And you can put in one name and it's fine. So those are the three things: global enablement, removing the language barrier, and removing the cultural barrier. I hear then, of course, focus, because you asked about kind of language and how does, language fit into Meta's overall mission. I'm focusing on the language barrier now. And I really divide this into three different categories. There are major languages. And when I say major language, I mean any language that is spoken by millions of speakers fluently. And so native fluency, right? So I would be a speaker of English in this definition, although I'm a native speaker of German. Major languages that are represented well on the internet, I call them major internet languages. That's my first category. Everybody's very familiar in this industry with those languages. It used to be the kind of big eight, and then it extended to 10, and now I think we're at about 30, where most companies localize into major internet languages, into kind of the top, what I call the top 30, right? This has your kind of Japanese, Chinese, it has German, French, and so on, type of languages. There's not just a lot of localization, there's also a lot of content on the internet in those languages in general. Then the second category is major languages that are not well represented on the internet. And the third category is the rest, all the other languages, right? And that includes endangered languages. There is a huge list maintained by the UNESCO of endangered languages. And our focus at Meta right now, of course, we serve the major internet languages, but our focus in terms of where we are is we are focusing on the major languages that are not well represented on the internet today. So think about Amharic, which is spoken in Ethiopia, is its main language. Think about Fula from West Africa. Think about Khmer from Cambodia. Think about Sinhala, right, from Sri Lanka. Those are languages that are spoken by millions, but they are not well represented on the internet today. And this is part of our strategy in terms of removing the language barrier to really work through not just the major internet languages, but the next kind of, languages that are really have the potential to be big coming online. And it's part of our strategy. We have to remove the language barriers for those type of languages, because otherwise we cannot bridge that gap. We cannot bring the world closer together. And currently Facebook is available in over 100 languages. We added a few last year. We are adding 10 plus this year. So we are really going at a pace where we are trying to bring these languages online to fulfill our mission.
I really like the way that you talk about this. It's very structured. You're kind of breaking things down and looking at the sort of different structure of some of these different topics that we're talking about. For me, I mean, something that seems infinitely complex. So it helps to have that kind of broken down as well. You mentioned there something like the 100 languages, adding 10 more and things like that. But I mean, how do you go about sort of thinking about the scale of internationalization operations at Meta? I mean, it must be immense, but I mean, are there ways that you kind of think about the resources, internal, external, the volumes and the projects and everything that you're working on?
Yeah, we do every day, right? I mean, first of all, it's my job to break things down and make it easy, right? Because that's how you communicate, not just externally, but internally too, to other executives, right? Because they need to understand what your department is doing and how you really bring value to the company, and what they say, have a seat at the table, right? And then in terms of scale, I already told you that we are available in more than 100 languages, and we translate millions of words every week. And so the scale is really mind-boggling, right? When you think about millions of words every week, it is a very optimized operation end to end. And when you think about what Facebook did back when it started, it was an app for college students, and it started in a dorm at Harvard, and then kind of became so popular very quickly that it kind of fanned out to different colleges, and very soon people around the world in colleges really wanted this, and people around the world outside of colleges wanted this to connect with family, to connect with friends, right? I have reconnected with many of my friends from college. I wish I would have had this in college, and because some of them I can't find. And at the time, it was a product with a very young audience, right? And it was a concept that was very new. Social media as a concept was very new. And so what Facebook did at the time, it really pioneered community translation at scale, because this was the way to get the right terminology, to roll this out extremely quickly into many languages, right? And over the course of time, community translators in mostly major internet languages and also in endangered languages have helped make Facebook available in those languages, right? Now, this is changing. This has gone from hundreds of thousands community translators contributing to under 10,000 community translators contributing. And I think we're seeing a shift here, especially with the focus on major languages that are not well represented on the internet. And so we are actually about to announce that we are ending the community translation program at Facebook, and it won't be available anymore. We are moving to a supplier sourced process, right? This is kind of, we of course have had a supplier sourced process for, working with MLVs, working with SLVs for some time. It was mixed, but we're moving fully to a supplier sourced process. And I'm actually really excited about this because we thought deeply about this, right? This is exactly the thing, kind of what I'm looping back to with your question in terms of like, how do you think about this? How do you make this work, right? Because one of the things that we found too, when you're looking at major languages that are not well represented on the internet, well, guess what? They're also not well represented in the MLV catalog. And so this is really a problem, right? And of course, I don't want to discredit the great work that MLVs have done here. They have started like Hindi a few years ago, didn't used to be really in the MLV catalog, let's say like 10 plus years ago. Now it's a major language, right? So they are reacting to this. They are moving very, very quickly in a way, but they're not moving fast enough for us. And so we have also built over the last few years a direct from SLV sourced model. So we have put the tech in place that we can directly source from SLVs, and we are we are working with SLVs in many countries, including African countries, including Southeast Asian countries, to really build translation infrastructure, help build translation infrastructure for these languages, and get us to the next stage where maybe 100 languages is standard, maybe 150, right, coming soon. And so this is kind of where we have changed from sourcing, also through community to supplier sourcing completely.
Can I just clarify that? So that's a big announcement, right? So we're talking about the Facebook Translate app, right? Where you can log in and then you can there's a big drop down with, a lot of languages. So you're saying you're moving away from this to a Meta managed SLV focused approach here. And so, I mean, you're probably also calling on some of these like super specialized in-country SLVs to support that process, right?
Yes, you are absolutely right. This is indeed a very big announcement. And we have given this a lot of thought, and we have really made a very big effort to figure out how to best do this. And we think that moving to a fully supplier-sourced model that is very inclusive of sourcing directly from SLV, especially for the major languages that are not well represented on the internet, is kind of the next thing to do. It will get us there. And we, of course, are still working also with some MLVs, right? This is part of our portfolio. We have a very diverse portfolio of suppliers overall at our scale. I mentioned earlier, millions of words translated per week. This is a scale that demands a diverse portfolio of suppliers, but the supplier strategy of sourcing directly from SLV and doing it with a large focus on majority languages that are not well represented on the internet, to build translation infrastructure to help, right? To build translation infrastructure is really new. And when I say build translation infrastructure, I want the audience to understand that in many of those languages, there is no Alliance Française, right? That really tells us what is the correct way to spell things. What are the correct words? Often there are even within that language many dialects, right? So we really have to work with a diverse set of people, even from the language, to make sure we're not hitting a tone that might be one dialect versus another, right? There is, for example, Swahili is a major language spoken in East Africa, and the Swahili in Tanzania is different from the Swahili in Kenya. And so we have to find ways to create this version of Swahili that speaks to everyone, right? All the speakers of Swahili. And this is very tedious, very difficult work. And I'm super proud of our team there and of the people on the ground and the SLV providers to really work with us on this and make this work. It's hard work.
It's almost like getting into kind of dictionary work, isn't it? If you think about some of these languages that maybe haven't been formalized in the same way as the major internet languages, kind of thinking about how you can make that accessible for a lot of people. But my one question was in terms of this SLV led strategy. Then, I mean, would you say that was mainly in response to the fact that MLVs don't have, perhaps adequate language coverage across all of these underserved languages? Or do you think that, the benefits of having an SLV-led strategy would have always convinced you to land on the SLV approach anyway?
A little bit. It's a portfolio of responses, really. There are always more than one reasons for these types of things, right? One of the reasons is that it is just as hard for MLVs to build this translation infrastructure as for anyone, right? That is one of the things. And we thought we can do really well with the tech that enables making the translation process as easy as possible. And that's what we're doing. Another thing, though, is really also the quality element, right? When you think about translation, all of us are always thinking about cost, right? But as a consumer product, I deeply think about quality every day, all the time. And so I really want the best quality. How do I get the best quality? Well, I get the best quality the closer my relationship is to the actual person who translates the content or who translates the words for us, the better the quality is. We used to have, pre-pandemic, we used to have a translation summit every year at then Facebook, now Meta, right? Where we would invite all the key translators of all of our major languages into one big room in Dublin or in Menlo Park, and we would have a big summit, and the exchange was incredible, right? Now, of course, we can't invite all translators, but we can invite kind of the lead maybe a couple of lead translators or so, and they go back with all this knowledge about the product, about the context, about how we want to do things, right? And this really also encouraged us to go directly to SLV, because the more you can like minimize the process from the actual product where the translated strings ends up to the translator who translates the string, right? The fewer people are in between that line, the better your quality is going to be. And that's really important. It's cost effective, but it's really quality significant, right? We've seen the results of this. We've seen the engagement, we've seen this. And so this is something that was quality driven, cost driven, and kind of circumstantial in terms of, hey, let's figure out how to source these languages driven.
Got it. So since we're talking to Meta, Iris, we need to talk about the metaverse. So how does internationalization look in the future metaverse? What shift are you expecting to happen? Speech to speech, avatars, customization, the whole gamut.
Yeah, absolutely. Facebook changed how people connected, right? It really did. Facebook, the product, right? Changed how people connected. Instagram is part of that. Facebook Messenger is part of that. WhatsApp is part of that, of course, as well as part of the Meta portfolio today, right? And in that sense, the metaverse is an evolution on that continuum, right? It's going to allow people to connect in different ways in the metaverse. And when you think about the metaverse and how it's a very immersive experience that we're trying to build, my first thought on this is everything will not just be about the written word that we translate today. Things are going to be about the spoken word, right? I want this little thing. I want to be James Kirk, tap on my communicator, and right? I want to talk to anybody in the world speaking English or German, and they can speak their language. And I want this just to be as seamless as Klingon in English, right? On Star Trek. And so I think this is really the dream, right? So as an industry, I think we really, you talked about the what we're doing on MT earlier. You mentioned it in your question. I didn't really address it. I think that's part of it, right? I think, machine translation has to become part of it. There always will be, translation by humans. Of course, we need it, right? But the need to even have translation everywhere ubiquitously is gonna force us to have it also by machines. And it's gonna force us to think about how do we contribute to this shift to the spoken word and getting that translated seamlessly and not just the written word. I think that's a major thing of what we have to think of. And how do we supply know-how and what's needed, right, to make these models work and all of those things. And then I think also the second thing is there will be a shift to further personalization, right? I call it local at a global scale. At Meta, we are consumer products by and large. We never want to do localization by finding the kind of least common denominator in this context, right? We want you to be in your local context. But then at the same time, we have to build anything that we do, we build it at scale, right? And so think about today, this exists in some art, some colors. You think about Yahoo Finance using red for a good day where the stocks are up in China and using red for a bad day where the stocks are down in the US. You think about the sticker packs that we have on Messenger, right? Where by and large, people in different parts of the world respond to different stickers, right? That's just a fact of life. That's how we interact. We're in our own cultural context. And so those are little things that we do today, But I think when you think of this immersive experience in the metaverse, you need to think about clothing. You need to think about the space that you create. What is your office going to look like? What's your house going to look like? What's your beach going to look like, right? And you need to think about the artwork on the walls and the color schemes, and all of those things are highly, highly personal. Your avatars, how do you want to be represented in the metaverse? How do we do a good job? Really, first of all, having an extensive catalog. And I think this is where localization becomes really, really important, right? Providing that extensive catalog of things to enable this local at a global scale personalization, right? To enable this local experience within your cultural context. And then the scale is, how do you rank it, right? That's obvious, because if I'm from, Germany, I might want to see the lederhosen, but if I'm from Indonesia, that might not be, might not even recognize that, right?
Nope.
And so those are the things, like, that's ranking. And how do you make sure every user gets what they really like, what speaks to them? So I think those are the two shifts. It's the shift. I think the written word will still be there, right? So don't misunderstand me when I say shift. But it's the addition of us thinking about the spoken word more and more. And it's the kind of shift to further personalization to really have a local experience, right? And I'm super inspired. I think I'm lucky to get to work on this, right? I'm excited about removing the language barrier, removing the cultural barrier, to truly bring the world closer together. So this just is what gets me up out of bed in the morning right now.
I was just going to say, I mean, you're not going to, run out of work on this, right? I mean, when you're talking about all these different aspects, when we are, walking around in the metaverse, there's so many other things to consider that in the text world aren't. So fascinating.
There's job security for all of us, right? And I think that the whole industry has to rally behind this, right? There is an opportunity for the industry to rally behind this and really enable this experience, this immersive experience for everyone, regardless of where you are on the planet, what language you speak, and what your cultural context is.
It could also be a benefit to those lower resource languages, if you're kind of almost bypassing that kind of written phase, in the same way that maybe some countries didn't have landline or landline internet type thing, dial up, went straight to mobile. You might see, a lot more localization happening of some of these longer tail languages, low resource languages in the metaverse based on speech rather than text.
Absolutely, right? I mean, half the languages in the world spoken today don't even have writing systems, right? And so this could really be an advantage for these languages, and potentially enabling these languages to really become part of this kind of digital world, and contribute to their vitality in a way. That's all our dream.
We need to beta test this in, let's say, 3 years from now, where we speak German, Esther speaks English, and we're all immersed in the metaverse in a meta studio, and we'll do the next iteration of this podcast then.
Yes. And you can speak Swiss German, and I'll speak regular German, and there needs to be a translation for that too.
Yeah, you have to get working on that, the Swiss German as well as the German.
That's its own language, I tell you.
We'll source some data until then. All right, that was fascinating. Thank you so much for taking the time today, Iris. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me here today, Florian and Esther. It was very exciting. Thank you so much.